how Trump destroyed the Republican establishment. For decades, the Republican Party operated like a machine built on hierarchy, loyalty, and tradition. Power flowed through senators, party leaders, donors, and longtime political strategists who controlled the direction of the GOP from behind closed doors. Figures like Mitch McConnell, John Cornyn, and other establishment Republicans represented stability inside the conservative movement. They believed political power came from experience, discipline, fundraising, and carefully managed influence within Washington. But Donald Trump changed all of that. And now, in Texas, one of the most powerful Republican figures in America may have just become the latest victim of Trump's political revolution. Senator John Cornyn was never supposed to be vulnerable. For years, he stood near the top of Republican leadership. He had money, influence, connections, and deep institutional support across Washington. Inside traditional Republican politics, Cornyn represented exactly what the GOP once valued: loyalty to the party structure, strategic thinking, and establishment control. But modern Republican politics no longer revolves around the party establishment. It revolves around Donald Trump, and the rise of Ken Paxton proves it. Paxton is not a traditional Republican politician. He represents a completely different version of conservative politics, one driven by aggression, media warfare, populist anger, and total alignment with Trump's political movement. Despite years of controversy, legal investigations, corruption accusations, and impeachment battles, Paxton continues gaining support from the Republican base for one simple reason: he is seen as loyal to Trump. That loyalty has become more valuable than experience, more valuable than reputation, more valuable than even political stability itself. When Trump publicly backed Paxton over Cornyn, the meaning went far beyond a normal endorsement. It was a warning to the Republican establishment. Loyalty to Trump now matters more than loyalty to the party. And Republican voters understood the message immediately. Across conservative media and MAGA circles, Cornyn was increasingly portrayed as part of the old Republican system, a system many Trump supporters believe failed them. To the MAGA movement, establishment Republicans are viewed as weak, disconnected from voters, and too comfortable inside Washington's political machine. Trump changed conservative politics by convincing millions of Republicans that the real enemy was not only Democrats, but also Republicans who refused to fully embrace his movement. That shift has transformed the GOP into something entirely different from the party it was 10 years ago. In many ways, the Republican Party is no longer operating like a normal political organization. It increasingly behaves like a movement built around one central figure, Donald Trump himself. That is why Cornyn's collapse matters so much politically, because if a powerful establishment senator from Texas can be politically destroyed after losing Trump's support, then almost nobody inside the Republican Party is truly safe anymore. Trump's influence now extends far beyond elections. He controls media attention, voter loyalty, fundraising energy, online conservative culture, and even fear itself inside the GOP. Republican politicians understand that openly opposing Trump can instantly trigger political backlash from MAGA voters, conservative influencers, and Trump aligned media personalities. That fear is reshaping the Republican Party from the inside. Many longtime conservatives quietly worry that the GOP is becoming less about conservative ideology and more about personal loyalty to Trump. But very few are willing to publicly challenge that transformation anymore because they have already seen what happens to Republicans who stand in Trump's way. Some lose elections, some lose donors, some disappear politically altogether, and now John Cornyn may become the latest example. What makes this moment especially dangerous for the Republican establishment is that Trumpism is no longer simply a temporary political trend. It has evolved into a powerful identity movement fueled by anger, cultural conflict, distrust of institutions, and deep emotional loyalty to Trump himself. That emotional loyalty is stronger than traditional party politics. And if the old Republican establishment continues losing power, a darker question is beginning to emerge inside Washington. Is the Republican Party still a political party, or is it slowly becoming Trump's personal political empire? Is the GOP becoming Trump's personal party? The Republican Party is entering one of the most important identity crises in modern American political history. For decades, conservative politics in America was built around ideology: lower taxes, national defense, small government, and traditional Republican values. Presidents came and went, but the party structure itself remained stable. Republican leaders controlled the movement, donors controlled funding, Senate leadership controlled strategy. Donald Trump shattered that structure, and now many Republicans fear the party may never return to what it once was. The Texas battle between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton is not simply a local Senate fight. It represents something much larger happening across the entire country: the gradual transformation of the Republican Party into a movement centered entirely around Trump. The most shocking part is not that Trump backed candidates are winning, it is how completely Republican voters now trust Trump over their own party leadership. For years, Republican establishment figures believed Trump's influence would eventually weaken after controversies, investigations, impeachment battles, and election defeats. Many assumed voters would eventually move back toward traditional conservative politics. Instead, the opposite happened. Trump's control over the Republican base became even stronger. Today, a Trump endorsement can completely reshape Republican elections within days. Candidates who once looked unbeatable suddenly become politically vulnerable if Trump turns against them. Meanwhile, politicians with scandals, controversies, or weak establishment support can survive as long as they maintain Trump's loyalty. That reality has terrified many traditional Republicans because power inside the GOP no longer flows through institutions. It flows through Trump himself. This creates an unstable political environment inside the Republican Party. Many Republican politicians now spend more time proving loyalty to Trump than promoting traditional conservative policy ideas. Public disagreement with Trump has become politically dangerous, especially in deeply conservative states where MAGA voters dominate Republican primaries. As a result, the GOP is slowly becoming more radicalized around personality driven politics rather than policy driven politics. And critics inside the Republican Party are beginning to ask uncomfortable questions. What happens when one man becomes larger than the party itself? What happens when loyalty matters more than competence? What happens when fear of political retaliation prevents Republicans from criticizing their own movement? Those fears are growing because the MAGA movement operates differently from traditional political structures. Trump's political power is emotional, cultural, and personal. Millions of supporters do not simply view him as a politician, they view him as someone fighting against corrupt institutions, media elites, and a political system they believe abandoned ordinary Americans. That emotional connection gives Trump extraordinary influence over Republican voters, and it also makes the party increasingly dependent on him. Some Republicans privately fear the GOP may eventually split into two versions of conservatism: traditional Republicans focused on governing, and MAGA Republicans focused on cultural warfare and loyalty to Trump's political movement. The problem is that the MAGA side currently appears stronger, much stronger. That is why the Corning collapse feels so symbolic inside Washington. It is not just about one senator losing influence. It represents the visible decline of the Republican establishment itself. Figures who once controlled the party are slowly fading away, and in their place, top-line politicians are taking control. To Trump supporters, this transformation feels necessary. They believe establishment Republicans failed to fight aggressively enough for conservative voters. They see Trump as someone who finally seized control away from weak political insiders. But to critics, the situation feels far more dangerous because political movements centered around one dominant personality can become unstable very quickly. When internal disagreement disappears, fear replaces debate, loyalty replaces independence, and parties begin revolving around protecting the leader instead of protecting principles. That's the deeper fear now spreading across Washington. Not simply that Trump controls the Republican Party today, but that the Republican Party may no longer know how to exist without him.